In my opinion, Hillary Clinton fucked up. She fucked up by not picking Elizabeth Warren. And yeah, I know that if she had picked Elizabeth Warren and Elizabeth Warren accepted, that because there is a Republican governor in the state of Massachusetts, that that governor would have been able to pick a senator to replace Warren. But the upside of that would have been that there would have to have been a special election within 90 days, and then they could have in turn replaced that Republican appointed senator with another Democrat. So as far as I was concerned, to me that was basically a win-win. But this is why Elizabeth Warren should have been on that ticket, okay? Not just because she was going to energize the millennials, but because she is the campaigner from hell. And when she goes after big business, she cuts out their hearts and feeds it to them. Watch this story.
The other real locus of power and energy in the Democratic Party at the national level is around Elizabeth Warren. And yes, Elizabeth Warren is a good and energetic campaigner, and it is, you know, nice and appreciated whenever some well-known senator travels all over the country and supports campaigns well outside his or her home state. That's always nice. But what gives Senator Elizabeth Warren the power that she has got in Democratic politics, the following she has got among the Democratic base, the national name recognition, and therefore the attention and even the momentum that she can bring to somebody else's campaign simply by showing up and saying, hey, support this person. It's not just that she's there. It's not just that she shows up and she talks good. The source of her power is what she's famous for nationwide. It's her status as a force of nature when it comes to watchdogging big business and Wall Street and the big banks in particular. And the most valuable bank in the world right now is called Wells Fargo. You might have seen in the business pages or even on the front pages. A couple of weeks ago, Wells Fargo paid $185 million in mostly fines. It was partly fines. It was partly what they had to pay back to their customers for a huge years-long scam in which the bank basically drove up its own stock price. It made itself seem more valuable, made itself seem like it was growing faster than it actually was by this scam in which they artificially inflated the number of accounts that each of their customers had at Wells Fargo. They gave their low-level employees quotas that they had to fill in terms of the number of new accounts they had to open for Wells Fargo's existing customers. And that resulted in millions of fake accounts, false credit card accounts, false checking accounts, false savings accounts, all created by Wells Fargo employees in the name of their customers so they could meet these quotas. So Wells Fargo would look like they had tons of accounts from each of their customers, so that would boost their stock price. It hurt their customers, screwed with their customers' credit ratings, right? Put customers on the hook for fees for these accounts that they never asked for and didn't want and didn't know they had. And when they got caught, the bank tried to blame just low-level employees. It fired thousands of low-level employees for having done this terrible thing. All the while, their executives at the bank got super rich from their own stock options because customers having all these multiple accounts made the bank look more valuable for Wall Street investors. They created these pernicious incentives inside the company for their low-level employees to do something unethical and wrong and illegal in order to boost the company specifically in a way that would make their executives rich. Gah. And then they tried to say, oh yeah, it's all of our terrible tellers, some terrible bank managers. We'll get rid of those little small fries. We're fine. It's one of the, not just one of the biggest scandals in banking since the financial catastrophe in 2008, it's also one of the most easy to understand. It's one of the easiest ones to see in terms of what's so grotesque about it. And today, the bank's CEO got a chance, lucky him, to answer for it.
You haven't resigned. You haven't returned a single nickel of your personal earnings. You haven't fired a single senior executive. Instead, evidently, your definition of accountable is to push the blame to your low-level employees who don't have the money for a fancy PR firm to defend themselves. It's gutless leadership. Other big banks average fewer than 3 accounts per customer, but you set the target at 8 accounts. Every customer of Wells should have 8 accounts with the bank. And that's not because you ran the numbers and found that the average customer needed 8 banking accounts. It is because, quote, 8 rhymes with great. This was your rationale right there in your 2010 annual report.
8 rhymes with great? 8 rhymes with great? Really? That's how they tried to cram 8 different accounts onto all of their customers, because 8 rhymes with great?
Do you know how much the value of your stock went up while this scam was going on?
It's all of my compensation is in our public.
Do you know how much it was?
It's all in the public filing.
Oh, you're right, it is all in the public records because I looked it up. While this scam was going on, you personally held an average of 6.75 million shares of Wells stock. The share price during this time period went up by about $30, which comes out to more than $200 million in gains, all for you personally. You know, here's what really gets me about this, Mr. Stump. If one of your tellers took a handful of $20 bills out of the cash drawer, they'd probably be looking at criminal charges for theft. They could end up in prison. But you squeezed your employees to the breaking point so they would cheat customers and you could drive up the value of your stock and put hundreds of millions of dollars in your own pocket. And when it all blew up, you kept your job, you kept your multi-million-dollar bonuses, and you went on television to blame thousands of $12 an hour employees who were just trying to meet cross-sell quotas that made you rich. This is about accountability. You should resign. You should give back the money that you took while this scam was going on, and you should be criminally investigated by both the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission.
Do you need a minute? You need to cool off after that? You only have a minute because Senator Elizabeth Warren's here next.
Elizabeth Warren is no joke. And you and I both know that she put a bug in the Securities and Exchange Commission's ear, and she also put a bug in the Justice Department's ear. And I bet you that bug is going to grow into a goddamn boulder.